Okay, so you want to own a McDonald's. You've pictured it. Not the food, the building, the low gray box with the yellow band, the drive-through lane already backed up at 7 in the morning, the sign on the pole, nearly 14,000 of them in America, and every one of them, you assume, has an owner. Somebody who bought in, runs it, keeps what's left. The most reliable business on earth, on the most reliable corner in town, and for the right price, one of them could be yours. The right price is public. McDonald's has to publish it in a document called a franchise disclosure. The 2026 edition puts the cost of opening a new restaurant at somewhere between $1.47 and $2.8 million. And before you get anywhere near that number, the company wants to see $750,000 of your own money, not borrowed, not a partner's, not the equity in your house. Yours, liquid, sitting there. McDonald's does not lend you a dime of it. So you find the money, you get through the door, you sign for a restaurant that rings about $4 million a year in sales, and your name goes on the office door. Here's the part the picture leaves out. The name on the deed is not yours. The building isn't yours. In most cases, the ground isn't yours. What you bought, for a 7-figure sum, is a 20-year lease on somebody else's business, and the somebody else is your landlord, your licensor, and your referee, all at once. To see how that works, and why 2,000 people still line up to sign it, you have to read the lease. Here's the assumption, and it's a reasonable one. You think you're buying a restaurant, a kitchen, a dining room, the most valuable food brand on earth over the door, and a 70-year-old system for selling hamburgers at speed. You pay for the license, you follow the manual, and then it's yours the way any business is yours. You carry the risk, and whatever's left at the end of the month is the reason you did it. Ownership. The word is right there on the application. Owner-operator. That's the story the brochure tells. You'd be a tenant, not in spirit on paper. McDonald's Corporation owns or controls the land and the building under most of its restaurants and rents them to the people who run them, as a percentage of every sale, on a 20-year term with no right to renew. The franchisee owns everything that moves. The company owns everything that doesn't and gets paid before anybody counts profit. So this video is about what a McDonald's owner actually owns. By the end, you'll know what the buy-in buys and how you're allowed in the unpaid year, the store you don't choose. You'll know the ledger from the register down, and why the rent is the engine of the whole company, the 1,956 decision behind it, the margin upstairs against the margin downstairs. You'll know what the landlord can bill you for, why the tenants formed a union in 2018, what happened when one of them sued, and what 3 years of $5 meals did to the math. And you'll know why a rival chain lets you in for $10,000 and why that's the same deal in a different suit. No villains required. Everyone here follows their incentives, the operator, the corporation, the crew. The incentives just stack into a shape where the person with the least risk holds the deed. Start at the door. You can't buy a McDonald's the way you buy a car wash. Having the money is where the process starts, not where it ends. First, you apply as a person, not a company. McDonald's does not allow partnerships or investors. The operator is you, full-time, personally, and if you own other businesses, you'll be asked to sell them. Then you train. The company says the program generally runs 6 to 12 months, part-time, at least 20 hours a week in a working restaurant, finishing at Hamburger University outside Chicago. The disclosure document allows about 2 years to complete every learning plan. You are not paid. The document says so in plain type. You will not be compensated during training, and you are not an employee of McDonald's or of any franchisee. You are learning to drop fries, for free, on your own time, to earn the right to spend $1 million. Then comes the part that surprises people. You don't pick a location. New restaurants, in the company's own words, are franchised in nearly all cases to existing franchisees. A newcomer enters, in most cases, by buying an existing restaurant from McDonald's itself, or from an operator selling out at a negotiated price the company approves, and you inherit that restaurant's lease on that restaurant's terms. Which restaurants a new operator gets offered is the company's call. It is, in effect, an assignment. Look at the club you're joining. Roughly 13,000 franchise McDonald's in the United States, run by some 2,000 owner-operators. 9 in 10 of them own 2 restaurants or more. This is not a system built for one person and one store. It's a system that grows by handing more stores to the people already inside it. Now the money from the register down. The costs of entry from the 2026 disclosure, $45,000 is the franchise fee, the price of the name. Then, for a new restaurant, between $1.1 and $1.85 million of signs, seating, decor, and kitchen equipment. You buy everything inside the box. The box itself and the dirt under it stay with McDonald's. Buy an existing store instead, and the number is whatever the seller and the company agree it's worth. Then it opens, and the tolls begin. Every month, off gross sales, not profit, sales you send McDonald's a service fee of 4%. 5. If the restaurant is one of the new ones opened since 2024, the first increase in nearly 30 years, you spend at least another 4% on advertising. And you pay rent. A base amount plus a percentage of sales that, by the disclosure document's own schedule, runs from about 8.5% to 15%, depending on what the company paid to build the site. Call it 18 cents of every dollar, gone before beef, buns, or wages. What's left? The company publishes its own tiers. A franchised McDonald's doing $3.4 million a year reported, on average, about $864,000 of what the document calls operating income, before occupancy costs a quarter of sales, after food, labor, and the light bill, but before rent, before the service fee, before depreciation, interest, and taxes. From there, the disclosure goes quiet, so what follows is a reconstruction, not a McDonald's number. Take out the 4% fee, $136,000. Take out rent at 12%, mid-schedule $400,000. You're left near $320,000, and you haven't paid the bank for the restaurant yet or yourself. Slow down on the rent, because the rent is the company. McDonald's Corporation, in its own annual report, owns about 56% of the land and 80% of the buildings under its restaurants. It leases them to franchisees on 20-year terms. The franchise and the lease expire together at a percentage of sales with a minimum. Sell more, pay more. The landlord holds a claim on every register in the building without frying a potato. Now, watch the two businesses on the same lot. Downstairs is your business. Perishable inventory, hourly crew, a broken ice cream machine, margins that live on volume. Upstairs is theirs. Rent and royalties calculated on gross sales, arriving whether your month was good or terrible. In 2025, the corporation collected $16.5 billion from its franchisees. $10.4 billion of it was rent. $6 billion was royalties. The landlord out-earns the licensor nearly 2-to-1. And the margins. On the franchise side of the business, the rent and royalty side, McDonald's reported a margin of 84% in 2025. On the restaurants, it still runs itself. 15. Same brand, same burger, same parking lot. Running the restaurant, mid-teens. Owning the ground and the name, mid-80s. The company says the quiet part in its own filing, franchise margins are about 90% of its restaurant profit. The other side of that sentence is the one you'd be living in. 10 to 15% margins at the store, the Owners Association wrote to the company in 2024. Before the loan, mid-single digits, most years, after everything. The house didn't cook anything. The house owns the house. And that gap is not an accident of accounting. It was a decision, made in 1956, by a man whose name isn't on anything. The story is short, and you'd be signing its paperwork. Ray Kroc's burger chain was growing fast in the mid-50s and earning almost nothing. His franchising deal capped his cut at 1.9% of sales, and he was borrowing against his life insurance to make payroll. In 1955, he hired Harry Sonneborn, a finance man from the clothing business, who looked at the books and found the company. Stop trying to get rich selling franchises. Get rich being the franchisee's landlord. His vehicle, Franchise Realty Corporation, founded 1,956, bought or leased the land under new restaurants and subleased it to operators at a markup, a percentage of sales, with a guaranteed minimum. Sonneborn later told a room of investors that McDonald's was not technically in the food business, we are in the real estate business. Kroc hated the framing and kept the model because the model was the company. It still is. Sonneborn's design also bought something a royalty never could: leverage. Miss your rent, stray from the system, and you don't just lose a franchise agreement, you lose the ground under your kitchen. And the leverage was built into the far end of the term too. 20 years on, your franchise expires with your lease and you have, in the disclosure document's words, no right to renew. A new term, since 2022, is earned, not given. You reapply, the company decides in its sole discretion, and its annual report spells out the menu. A new 20-year deal with you, a new deal with somebody else, or close the restaurant. Want to sell before then? Every buyer needs McDonald's approval, and McDonald's can match any offer for your business. Your equity is real. Your exit is theirs. Which brings us to what a landlord can bill for. In 2018, McDonald's announced a $6 billion push to remodel most of its American restaurants by 2020, digital kiosks, new decor, double drive-thrus. Per restaurant, the trade press put the cost at anywhere from $160,000 to about $750,000. The company would pay 55% if you finished by 2020, 40% after. The rest was yours, on a building you don't own, on a timeline you didn't set. When the new owners group polled its members that winter, most said one whole piece of the remodel returned nothing at all. Because there was, by then, an owners group. In October 2018, in a hotel in Tampa, more than 400 franchisees did something no group of McDonald's operators had done in the company's history. They formed an independent association, the National Owners Association. Their first complaints were the remodels, the discounting, and the menu. One letter put it plainly: our ability to price our menu boards may be one of the last controls we still have. Within a few years, it claimed around 1,000 members, half the system. The bills kept coming anyway. In late 2020, the company told operators it would start charging $423 a month per restaurant to recover a lag in technology fees, part of roughly $12,000 a year in new charges, about 8% of a typical restaurant's profit by the trade press's arithmetic. The operators revolted, an outside audit was ordered, and the one-time charge was cut by more than 60%. Note the shape of that fight, not whether the landlord could bill the tenant. Only how much? The lease shows most clearly in a courtroom. In February 2021, Herb Washington, who had run McDonald's restaurants for decades, sued the company in federal court in Ohio. His claim was structural, and it maps exactly onto everything above. He said the company had steered him toward older restaurants in lower-income black neighborhoods, denied him the affluent area stores he asked for, and that the difference was worth about $700,000 a year in sales per store. He cited a count: 377 black franchisees in 1998, 186 by the time he filed. In December of that year, the case settled. McDonald's bought his remaining 13 restaurants for $33.5 million, and he left the system. The company noted the court had made no finding that it broke any law. Two brothers in Tennessee, the Birds, settled the same month, 4 restaurants, $6.5 million. Set the merits aside. A court never reached them. And look at what the suit assumes about the business. It assumes that which restaurant you're offered is the whole ledger, that the sales, the rent, the remodel bill, and the profit are decided the moment the company assigns you a piece of dirt. It's the model, working exactly as designed. And the leash has only tightened since. In 2022, the company rewrote its ownership standards. No more automatic new terms, no more preferential status for spouses and children. In 2024, the service fee rose to 5% on new restaurants. And on the 1st of January 2026, McDonald's began assessing operators' menu prices against what it calls the brand's value positioning. Remember the 2018 letter, the last control the operators said they still had. That was the price on the board, which is where the last 3 years come in, because they were spent fighting over that board. By early 2024, McDonald's had a traffic problem. A decade of prices outrunning inflation and customers pulling back. Corporate's answer was a $5 meal deal, launched the 25th of June 2024. The Owners Association wrote back that a $5 meal, in a penny profit business, necessitates a financial contribution by McDonald's. Meaning, your rent doesn't shrink when our prices do. The company replied that operator cash flow was up nearly 50% since 2018. The deal was extended through December for some stores, analysts said, at a loss. In January 2025, it became a permanent value menu. The numbers behind the fight. US same-store sales fell in the second quarter of 2024, the first drop since 2020, and fell 3.6% in the first quarter of 2025. In California, where the fast food minimum wage went to $20 an hour in April 2024, the Owners Association projected $250,000 a year in added cost per restaurant. By September 2025, the chief executive was telling investors that franchisee cash flow was off maybe 10% from its all-time high. Sales have grown again since. The margins that took the hit were the tenants. The rent, calculated on sales, barely noticed. Now hold it next to the other deal. Chick-fil-A will make you an operator for $10,000. Non-borrowed, non-gifted. The company builds the restaurant, owns the equipment, owns the land, and takes 15% of sales plus half of what's left. You get one restaurant, in most cases, and by trade, estimates about 5 to 7% of revenue for running it, roughly what the McDonald's operator ends up with, after a 7-figure buy-in. Tens of thousands apply every year. Roughly 100 are chosen. Chick-fil-A charges nothing and lets you own nothing. McDonald's charges 7 figures and lets you own everything but the ground, which is the one thing that never loses money. So, can you own a McDonald's? You can own the fryers, the seats, the sign you paid for, and the crew's paychecks. You can own a 20-year job that keeps, in a good year, mid-single digits of $4 million, and that, if the landlord approves the buyer, you can sell. That's real. It's why the training rooms are full and 2,000 people hold the keys. What you can't own is the box, the corner, the price on the board, or the right to still be there in year 21. Those belong to the landlord, the same landlord that collects $10 billion a year in rent from people exactly like you and books it, in its own filings, as the bulk of its restaurant profit. Sonneborn's sentence is 70 years old and still on the wall, not technically in the food business. The food is yours, the business is theirs. You buy the kitchen, you rent the ground, you sell the job. The business, the actual business, was never for sale.